everyone. I hope you are fine. I hope you are doing well. This is part 3 of the letter of King Leopold II of Belgium to the colonial missionaries in Africa, 1883. Your history is your history. Your history is very important. I know for a fact that every time or whenever you tell your history, there are many people who might feel uncomfortable. But your history is not complete until you tell it as it is. Not because you want to offend other people, not because you are against a certain group of people, but your history will always be important. Especially here in Africa, history is very important because here in Africa we have this tendency of not writing down our history, even though in the ancient times it was written down, but there was a time when it was distorted. So we have to understand that history is very important, and again at the same time it has to be recorded, because once it is not recorded it might be distorted. So without any waste of time, let's get started. So please bear in mind or remember that King Leopold II is one of the most cruel people to have ever landed in Africa. This is a fact. This is the truth, not because we are trying to say something else or to do something else or to encourage something else. This is what he said. The reason we have part 1, part 2, and part 3 is because history has to be understood as well. Because, in other words, to tell a story, it's a beautiful thing, it's a good thing. But it's important, again, to make sure that the very same story is understood. Your action will be directed essentially to the younger ones. Your action will be directed essentially to the younger ones. Why? For they won't revolt when the recommendation of the priest is contrary to their parents' teachings. There's something that we need to understand here. You have to understand that according to the nature that was created, because I don't want to be that spiritual. According to the nature that is created, a child has to be raised by a father and a mother. And a person who will always be accountable or responsible for this child is the father and the mother. And the people who should determine what should go into the brain of this child, what should sink into the brain of this child, is the responsibility of the father and the mother. But now you have to understand, whenever a system is created, you have to cause disaster. You have to bring confusion. You have to bring separation. In other words, you have to make this child to believe that the presence of the father is not necessary. You have to make this child to believe that the presence of the mother or the advice of the mother is not necessary. That is why they are like, your action will be directed essentially to the younger ones, for they won't revolt when the recommendation of the priest is contrary to their parents' teaching. There's something that you need to understand here. Because if you can understand that it's the responsibility of your father to make sure or to determine what goes into your mind, every time you go out there and you hear other people saying something which is contrary to the teachings of your father, and in other words, you will start distancing yourself from those people. Or you will go and ask your father and say, my father, this is what I heard from other people. What is going on? Can you please give me clarity? Then your father will give you clarity and say, okay, that's wrong. Don't take it. And you won't take it. Why? Because you rely upon the teachings of your father. But here's the thing. The system has to replace the father with something else. The system has to replace the mother's advice with something else. That is why sometimes when you see children behaving in a certain way, you start asking yourself if their parents are aware of this. And as you dig deep, then you find out that even their parents are surprised. Even their parents don't know what is going on. Why? It's because you have to understand that the intention of the system is to replace the father with something else. You have to, in other words, you have to remove the father. This is the strategy of King Leopold II, and the very same strategy is still being used by the system till today. That is why right now, as we speak, you have a television. I'm not saying all these things are bad, but I'm saying now, as we speak, you have television, you have social media, you have pastors, you have mentors, you have celebrities, you have all these other people who have replaced our parents. All these things have replaced our parents. How? Because here is the strategy. You have to understand that whenever they teach you, they have to make you believe that your parents are inferior. That is why there's a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old who thinks he's clever or more intelligent than his mother. This is how the system operates. This is how the system works. This is the system of King Leopold II, to say, you know what? We have to bring in the priest as a spiritual father. So in other words, the spiritual father should be trusted more than the father, more than the mother. Is still happening even today. That is why whenever you ask people, who is your role model? You ask these children, you ask them, who is your role model? They'll bring the name of a billionaire who lives in America, a billionaire who lives in China, a billionaire who lives in Russia or somewhere. Why? Because they don't believe. They don't believe in their parents. They don't believe in their fathers. They don't believe in their mothers. That is why if you can break this structure, then you can get the younger ones. The moment you get the younger ones, then the next generation will no longer be familiar with the original structure of a father and a mother. This is King Leopold. This is a system and is still working today. That is why you ask yourself, what is going on? It's because of the system that was created long time ago. That is why I always say, without offending anyone, it's easy to manipulate black people. Very easy. You just have to make them feel inferior. That's the only thing you need to do. Then they'll start adopting everything that comes from outside. Why? Because now they believe that they are inferior. Once you believe that you are inferior, then you can accept whatever. That is why right now people are getting advices from social media, from certain websites. People are getting advices from television, from movies, and all these things. This is where people get their advices. Sometimes you ask yourself, why these people are behaving in this way? It's because their mentor is the television. Their mentor is the movie program director. These are the things that we need to pay attention to and try by all means to understand. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in trouble. We are already in trouble right now. Look at what is happening. How young people are behaving, and etc. and etc. is because of the system. Because we have to understand the system has many categories. That is why King Leopold was like, based on their behavior and attitude, because now they know the difference between right and wrong. we have to um, target them by using the priests. We have to target them by using the priests. So it means if you don't go to church, then you must be manipulated by something else. You will be paid by alcohol. In other words, alcohol will be used in the process in order to manipulate you. If you go to church, then the spiritual father is there to manipulate your brain. Focus on the younger ones, because the younger ones won't say anything even if you teach them what is against their parents. That is why right now, as you speak, the parents got nothing to do, or they cannot do anything at all. Why? Because now the government is the priest. The government now is the priest. And this priest, which is the government, is teaching what is contrary to the parents' teachings. That is why many parents have given up. Why? Because there's absolutely nothing they can do. Why? Because the government is in charge. The government is in control. Target the younger ones. The children have to learn to obey what the missionary recommends, who is the father of their soul. Man, you can try to advise people, but the moment they tell you about their pastor, that my pastor said this, there's absolutely nothing you can do. Even if you are telling them something which is true, you are giving them innocent advice, but the moment they say, my man of God said this, my prophet said this, you have to run away. This is a system. This is a system. So King Leopold was like, okay, this is a system that we can use in order to put our hands on something, to put our hands on the minerals, to put our hands on the minerals. So that is why even now, history is not taught. If history is taught, it's distorted. Why? You have to understand that you should not pay attention to anything so that the government can continue selling the country, selling the minerals of the country, because you don't even understand what is going on. This is a system. In other words, they want you to focus on something else so that they cannot be disturbed while they are focusing on the riches. They want you to focus on heaven, the angels, so that you won't disturb them whenever they process these minerals. This is the thing. This is what you need to understand. Even the people you call your role models and etc., these people don't care. It's all about their interest, like King Leopold II. Why this history is important? Because other people might say, now you are digging the past, now you are causing division, and etc., etc. I'm not there. Why? This history is important so that you can understand where we went wrong. So right now, if you want to fix the problem of Africa, when it comes to families, when it comes to history, when it comes to all these things, you should not deal with the symptoms, but you have to deal with the root of the problem. You have to deal with the root of the problem. Here is the root of the problem. The moment you demolish the family structure, everything is done. That is why we have a high rate of everything, high rate of alcohol amongst black people, high rate of divorces, high rate of disorder, high rate of crime, high rate of everything. Why? You have to go to history. We have to use history in order to fix this. You cannot fix the symptoms. You cannot tell people that you should stop drinking alcohol, you should stop watching TV, and etc. You have to deal with the problem. In other words, the most important thing is to teach people about why these things were created and how are they being used against you. This is what you need to teach people. You have to go back to the roots. It might help. It might help. But right now, as we speak, we can tell that it's bad. You must singularly insist on a total submission and obedience. Avoid developing the spirit in the schools. Teach students to read and not to reason. That is why the moment you speak like me, they'll call you a politician, even if you don't even know a single politician. They will call you a politician. Why? Because the system has taught us that you should not reason. You should not ask certain questions. That is why right now, even in the church, why I mention the church is because King Leopold II used a church system. That is why even in the church today, you cannot ask any question, because the moment you ask certain questions, then they tell you that you are rebelling against God Most High. Then they tell you that you are doing something which is evil, something which is not good. But sometimes I ask myself, what will happen if God can say, you know what? I want to come to you every month. I will reveal myself to the whole world. And I will allow you, maybe 5 of you from different parts of the world, to ask questions. Guess who will revolt against that? Guess who will be against that? First are the pastors, the bishops, and reverends, and the historians, those who distorted history. Because they, in other words, they'll understand very well, they'll know very well that we'll start asking questions that are based on history, questions that are based on truth. So that is why here they're like, don't teach them to reason. They have to read. They have to read, not to reason. Then, dear patriots, are some, or their dear patriots, are some of the principles that you must apply. You will find many other books which will be given to you at the end of this conference. In other words, you will find many other books. Many other books. That is why even today we have people who are like, you must have a bookshelf. You must have books in your bedroom. You must have books in your living room. You must have books even in the bathroom. You must have books everywhere. People are like, you must read. You must read. But they don't ask a valuable question. What are you reading? Is it necessary? What is all about what you are reading? Because right now we have people who are like writing books every day, all the time. They are busy writing books. But are those books necessary for your brain? Because remember, it is the responsibility of the father and a mother to determine what sinks into the child's brain. This is very important. But you have to bear in mind that these books should replace, the father should replace the mother. I'm not saying the mothers and fathers are always perfect, but you have to understand that during these times of King Leopold II, a father was a father and a mother was a mother. And they did not like that. That is why they're like, now we have to bring all these books. So what is manipulating people today is the books. Because you believe that if you can read like 1,000 books, then you will be the most intelligent person in the world. And that's not true. That's not true. The most important thing is to know your history. Then you can determine where you want to go, because now you are fully aware. You are fully aware. That is why even the system is against history. The system is against history. You tell your story, you tell your history, and people will come against you. This is my perception. Evangelize these people. He used the N word so that they stay forever in submission to the white colonialists. So they never revolt against the restraints they are undergoing. Reside every day. Reside every day. Reside every day. Happy are those who are weeping, because the kingdom of God is for them. Because if you're going through trials and tribulations, you are crying. If you go through poverty, you are crying. If you go through stress and depression, you are crying. When you go through divorce and all these things, you are crying. But all these man-made things, this is what you need to say. Whenever you go through all these man-made things, this is what you need to say. Happy are those who are weeping, because the kingdom of God is for them. You are going through what you are going through because of God. That is why you need to be happy when you are weeping, because you are going through what you are going through because of God. But in reality, it's not like that. How can you create a system that is against people? Then whenever it affects them, then you begin to say, it's because of God. People should be very careful. Because right now, as we speak, we are living in the dangerous times, and we were living in the dangerous times. But what makes these days to be worse than any other days in history is because right now there's no structure. Right now there is no structure. If you go to TikTok, other platforms of social media, and etc., you can tell that there's no structure. Everybody now is an advisor. And the advice that is taken by many people is the advice that King Leopold II of Belgium would applaud today if he was still alive.